Well, schools in Scotland are to return from the 11th of August, albeit with a mixture of home and classroom learning. But what about those poorer children who may have missed out on a significant chunk of their education during the lockdown? There have already been warnings about the risk of the widening attainment gap. So how can parents, teachers and schools ensure children aren't disadvantaged long term? Let's speak to Iain MacRitchie, who's founder and CEO of MCR Pathways. That's a group which mentors vulnerable pupils across the country. And also on the line is Barry Black, who is a researcher in educational attainment and disadvantage at Glasgow University. Welcome to both of you. Thank you for joining us. Barry Black, what kind of impact do you think this gap in learning will have had on children?
So I think there's a significant risk that we'll see an increased attainment gap across all curriculum areas due to the lockdown. If we look at learning from other areas such as summer holidays, we know that the literacy and numeracy of the poorest pupils decreases while it increases for the richest. And just with the scale and level of this lockdown and unprecedented nature of it, there's a real risk that those gaps will increase. Because of issues such as learning at home and, contact time in the classroom and things like that.
And Iain MacRitchie, your organisation, as we said, mentors vulnerable pupils. Do you think more will have become vulnerable during the past few months?
Well, I think so. I mean, I absolutely agree with what Barry says. I would probably take it a step further to try and get people's attention, as I think there is a crisis coming. I think it's just a point of fact that the attainment gap will have been widened. What we find from the experience of, our young people, if I can try and bring it to life a little bit, these are young people that have exactly the same talent and potential. That's the first thing I think all listeners should really be clear of. What happens, and it happens to us even personally, when you've got a bit of instability at home, it does affect your ability to concentrate. And that's really at the heart of this. What you've got with those young people is a huge degree of instability at home, lack of resource, which means they just can't engage in education unless they get additional support, additional help. So things like we do, for example, in providing mentors, actually helps build encouragement and helps build the confidence of the young people. Now, pull that mentoring away, pull the teacher contact time away, then I think we're facing the greatest crisis coming down in terms of that attainment gap.
Yeah, but Barry Black, would you agree with that? And also, there are many factors, aren't there, in a child's life which are far beyond the influence of schools.
That's exactly right. And I think I would absolutely agree with what's been said there. It's not just about the basics of technology. You can't just give young people who are disadvantaged a laptop and all of a sudden online working will be successful. It's about parental attainment in education, about the structured learning environment at home, and being able to use the resources that you access online in any meaningful way that's useful to your learning. So I would completely agree with what's been said there. In terms of, the scale of what is potentially coming and when we return in August.
Yeah, Iain MacRitchie, extra money is allocated to try and close this attainment gap. And also there's been an impact fund which the First Minister announced to go towards laptops for children and young people. But what is not happening at the moment which you think should be happening?
Well, it really is. If we go back to what's been suggested in terms of, of the lockdown, first of all, to say this is the longest absence from education that I think any young person has experienced, certainly as far as I'm aware, whether it's right back 100 years. So everyone is in the same boat to begin with. To emphasise the points raised that what Barry said, it's not just about resource. It's not just about money. It's about how that money and resource is then used. What these young people really need is relationship-based practice. Now, that sounds professional, but they just need people to spend the time with them to compensate for the degree of instability and chaos that they have going at home, because it just impacts their ability. So time and how we use the resource, but it has to be relationship-based. We're talking about a staggered timetable going back. Now, for me, what that needs to engage and what that needs to include is some extra time and support for those individuals, just to help explain, help them catch up, give them the encouragement. So I think it's use of the resource. As Barry has said, it's absolutely not about saying, there's a laptop, everything's sorted out, internet access, everything's sorted out. That is one part of which there needs to be many, but the whole wrapper is relationship-based.
And Barry Black, would you agree? And is it the case that some schools, some councils will make this work?
Absolutely agree with that. It's just one element and the first basic element. I think the important thing is what comes after that in terms of, contact time and exactly what was outlined there. And I think what we're looking at just now in terms of integrated online learning and the curriculum, and the EIS has called it the curriculum challenge of the century. And I think there's a reasonable argument that it's just as big a reform as the curriculum for excellence itself. And what we really need to see is the core infrastructure of this online learning, because it's going to be on every course, in every level, in every subject in the country. It has to be led nationally, the infrastructure for this, because then we're just going to end up with a situation where individual schools and individual councils who will do fantastic work will offer differing levels of services. So schools and councils, of course, to have the ability to run their education service, but the core infrastructure of this online platforms must be led nationally. Otherwise, we're going to see different provision in different parts of the country, and that's where we can't end up.
Iain MacRitchie, would you agree?
Yes, definitely. I think we have a crisis, full stop. We've reacted and responded in some ways economically. We've really helped initially deal with, food shortages, all these things. Now's the time to turn that creativity and that focus into, there is an attainment gap. It's had the greatest impact in it, no question, over the last 3, 4, 5 months. We have got good practice. We have got really creative and committed teachers. We've got creative and committed technologists. This doesn't need to be, as radical. We have the answers. We have the practice. It's just about making sure that we get the resource focused, as Barry said. We get a curriculum that's engaging, but then most importantly, we give young people the time and put them at the centre of this. The slight challenge I have is that we don't hear enough young people's voices running through. What do they want? What do they feel? What would help them catch up, get back, and most importantly, realise their potential? We support 2,300 young people each week. We've now managed to move about 1,300 of those onto a virtual platform, but we've asked them, what way do you want to engage? So I think young person's voice needs to come at the centre, but I agree with Barry that this is a national crisis. We need to address it on that basis.
Well, listen, thank you very much indeed for your time, both. Iain MacRitchie there from MCR Pathways, and also